Shabbat Shalom. So I want to tell you all about a very particular Facebook group. Raise your hand if you currently are in or have spent any time in any Facebook groups. Okay. How many of you enjoyed the time you spent in those Facebook groups? Okay, that's good. Some of them are better than others. Imagine this. A Facebook group that includes almost every Reform rabbi in North America. So where you should gasp, like, Until recently, this group mostly contained posts like, can anyone recommend some good sources on feminist approaches to interpreting Torah that are appropriate for a 12-year-old? That was a recent one. Or, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, so does anybody have a good story for Passover Tat Shabbat? But unsurprisingly, after October 7th, this group, like so many places on the internet, when it came to talking about Israel, fell victim to forms of argument and angry accusations that were so heightened and charged that it could qualify as toxic. And I, who wants to keep a finger on the pulse and frankly loves a little dose of rabbinic drama from time to time, I found myself checking this group again and again, reading every comment, consumed by the anger and vitriol, until one Friday night, about a month ago, just before services, I was scrolling on the group and I read about a fight where some rabbis were telling each other, they were saying to each other, if you hold those beliefs that are so different than mine, I don't think you're part of the Jewish people. Now, I don't believe that those voices on those groups represent most rabbis. But witnessing this interaction left me feeling helpless and depressed about the Jewish people and the world. And that is not how you want to feel right before leading services. Now, thankfully, I ran into Cantor Addy, who kindly and wisely said to me, I think it's nice to not spend too much time on some of those groups, you know? But I'm sharing this because I am so concerned for the Jewish people right now. We are a people who have always prided ourselves on our belief that discourse and debate is what keeps us strong. And we are extraordinarily diverse for such a small group of people. But the post-October 7th landscape has exposed deep fissures in our community. We are deeply divided on our beliefs around Israel and Palestine. We are deeply divided on how we should be responding to anti-Semitism. And those issues are now leading us to be fractured in our response to American politics. And I know that if rabbis, a group of people who share work, who share education, who share frame of reference, time spent in Israel, and a deep love for the Jewish people, if we are struggling so significantly to talk about these issues, how much more difficult will it be for the rest of us? Jews need to learn to talk to one another. This has been true for a very long time. But post-October 7th, I'm feeling the urgency and the acuteness of this need. I'm curious how many of you feel like you could comfortably sit down with any person in this community and have a conversation about your feelings about the war taking place between Israel and Gaza. And would you feel like you could safely and comfortably share your opinions and respectfully listen to the others? My guess is that this sounds unappealing or even risky to many of us for a number of reasons. The first is that these conversations are deeply emotional. Wherever you are on the political spectrum, if you care about what's happening, the stakes right now are so high. We are talking about war. We're talking about the deaths of tens of thousands of people. And we're hearing words being used like terrorism and genocide and ethnic cleansing, and how are we going to survive, and how are they going to survive? Of course, these are deeply emotional conversations. They are of the most profound moral consequence. And so when we encounter perspectives we disagree with, we find that our deepest fears and anxieties can be triggered. And it's incredibly hard to not just try to shut the other person down, but to shut them out. The second reason that these conversations are so deeply difficult is because we are all receiving such different sources of information. We are not reading the same stories. We are not getting the same numbers, and we do not trust the same sources. There are so many examples of this, but one that comes to mind is the case of Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia University graduate student who was arrested by ICE over his involvement in pro-Palestinian protests. Now, I want to be clear, and you may not agree with this. I want to be clear that I believe that the most important element of this issue is the due process that he and every person in this country deserves. And that the videos of graduate students being swept off of the streets by plainclothes ICE officers is terrifying to me and terrifying to others in this community. But I saw two completely different narratives being built about Khalil online by the Jewish people. I saw one group of Jews saying that Khalil is a Hamas-loving, Israel-despising, extremist anti-Semite. And I saw a different group of Jews claiming that he is a Shabbat dinner-attending seeker of peace who deeply desires safety and security in Israel and Palestine for both Israelis and Palestinians. The truth is that I genuinely do not know which of these stories is true, and that very few, if none of us, do. I have heard so many of us decrying the propaganda that we feel the other side is guilty of believing. But I have not seen us questioning the way that we ourselves are susceptible to warped truths and false narratives. Jews really need to learn to talk to one another. We need to talk to one another because if a group that is less than 2% of the American population cannot figure out how to engage respectfully across difference, to learn and to listen even when it's hard, even when we disagree at the core of our being, how can we fight against the dangerous national trend of mass polarization? We are not just in a time of polarization. We are in a time of mass polarization. The difference is that in times of mass polarization, the actions and skills that help us connect to one another, connect to people who are different than us, the actions that help us challenge our perceptions and question our assumptions, those actions are perceived as evil, as a betrayal to our side. But it's really mass polarization that is dangerous. A world of mass polarization forces us to divide ourselves into narrow camps. It leaves us feeling isolated and distrustful. It creates a contempt for the other that leads to and even encourages violence. And I have to tell you that sociologists are currently looking at the American population and saying that this is the most polarized we have been since the Civil War. So it's not a good moment. In this week's Parsha, Parshat Pikudei, The Israelites are continuing on their desert wanderings, and they're trying to figure out, what does it mean to be the Jewish people? We are told that God appears to them as a cloud. This is in stark contrast to the version of God who appears to the Israelites at Mount Sinai as they receive the Ten Commandments. The God at Mount Sinai came down to the Israelites in lightning and thunder and a clear voice. And the Israelites could not hear that version of God because it made them too afraid. So God has to learn. And God learns to appear as a cloud. Not with clarity, not with one singular truth, but with a certain level of softness. A God that is present, but nebulous. Felt, but ultimately not defined. There is so much cloudiness in this moment, but it's not always the God-like kind. We are afraid, we are upset, we want to know we're not alone. So I hear, and I think a lot of the clergy hears a lot of whispers. Whispers like, I'm not sure my beliefs are shared by others at the temple. Or I can't believe the temple did this, but they didn't do that. Or my child feels differently than me and I don't know what to think. Or I can't believe that someone in our community said that. Or I don't know if I belong here anymore. Jews need to learn to talk to one another. Because those things that you're whispering to us, those anxieties, those fears, they deserve to be heard by the people who don't share them. We need to learn how to say them confidently and out loud, not to correct people or shame them or shut them down, but because our community can be a place that rises above, that holds so many voices, that transcends polarization, even mass polarization. We can be a place where a multiplicity of viewpoints and perspectives are seen, are honored, are heard. And we can be a place where God exists not as a singular truth, but in the softness and indefiniteness of a cloud. Shabbat Shalom.